Hi class, this is Professor Harmony Kim and this video record is for the lecture of week 4, November 1st. We continue to study the Four Noble Truths. The truth is tied to the knowledge. What is the definition of knowledge? That you've studied last week. So, I introduce valid means of knowledge. Valid means of knowledge was proposed by Dignaga. Dignaga was the Indian scholar during the 6th century CE. Valid means of knowledge is called pramana in Pali. Upon proposing valid means of knowledge or Buddhist theory of knowledge, Dignaga provides two attributes. One is perception and the other one is conception. So today we will study more detail about perception and conception. This logic is not easy, it's not simple. So I'm going to introduce this topic again by including some other Buddhist schools in India. Since Dignaga proposed valid means of knowledge, Dignaga's logic refers to the pramana, a Buddhist theory of knowledge. The Buddhist logic system in relation to perception has developed around the 5th to 7th century CE by the well-known Buddhist logician Dignaga. Dignaga has contributed on the system of Buddhist logic of great extent from the 5th century onward up to present days. In the Pramana Samuchaya, that is Buddhist literature, Dignaga wrote, and Dignaga stated his Pramana theory, and Pramana theory elaborate the instrumental means of generating knowledge. There are two valid forms of knowledge. They are Pratyaksha and Anumana. Pratyaksha, in other words, direct or bare perception, and Anumana means inference or conception. In contrast to Anumana, Pratyaksha is devoid of conceptual construction. Let's look at Pratyaksha first. The etymology of Pratyaksha, the word Pratyaksha, is composed of prati, toward, near to, and aksha means sense. This word suggests that perception is dependent on the sense organ, as its specific cause, prati as a prefix to their derivatives nouns. In other words, the meaning is toward, near to, back, again, upon, on that sense organ. Pratyaksha refers to as the first moment of perception, straight, intuitive knowledge, the moment of the first perception, the first flash of knowledge. Pratyaksha is subcategorized into the four kinds of forms described by Dignaga, such as Indriya Pratyaksha, sense perception, Manasa Pratyaksha, mental perception, Svasamvedana Pratyaksha, self-cognition or self-awareness, and Yogi Pratyaksha, perception of meditating yogins. Indriya Pratyaksha directly contact between sense and object, and there is no any subsequent conceptual property, just first moment. Manasa Pratyaksha is called mental perception. The object of mental perception is a derivative from the object of the immediately preceding Indriya Pratyaksha. But still, Manasa Pratyaksha is free from conceptual construction. Except Indriya Pratyaksha, The other three Pratyaksha, which are Manasa Pratyaksha, Svasamvedana Pratyaksha, and Yogi Pratyaksha, are not triggered by the direct contact between sense and object. Therefore, understanding the meaning of a Pratyaksha should be covered beyond the account of the word. The meaning of a word only includes the contact between sense and the object, but the true underlying concept of a Pratyaksha is not only limited to that meaning of term, more include the concept. So it implies not only direct sense-object coordination, but also the type of knowledge. The characteristic of this kind of knowledge is straight and intuitive. So in order to define Pratyaksha, contact between sense and organ is required, as well as the characteristic of a Pratyaksha is straight and intuitive. Indriya Pratyaksha as to sense consciousness or sense perception, and Manasa Pratyaksha as mental consciousness or mental perception are mainly focused on this section based on the delineation of Dignaga or other commentators. Yogi Pratyaksha will be introduced in relation to meditation practice. 4 kinds of Pratyaksha in the previous slide are equivalent to 4 means of valid perception which I introduced last week. They are sense perception, mental perception, self-awareness, and yogic perception. So sense perception is equal to Indriya Pratyaksha. Manasa Pratyaksha means mental perception, and self-awareness, Svasamvedana Pratyaksha, and yogic perception equal to yogi Pratyaksha. From Prama Samuchaya, written by Dignaga, Dignaga expresses that Indriya Pratyaksha, such as sense perception, renders the object perceived in itself without processing the object with its attribute. The objects can be differentiated by their names, and the conceptual construction makes it possible to conjugate the object with its name. For instance, perceiving the color blue and conceiving this is blue are quite different, because conceiving this is blue is engaged by way of intellectual process. In respect to an object, he has the senses of the object itself, but does not possess any notion of its name. The description regarding the definition of sense perception by Stravinsky is real sense perception is only the first moment of perception. Perception is a source of knowledge, and the function of that knowledge of making the object present in the can is followed by the construction of its image. Therefore, the sense perception generated by the 5 kinds of sense organs through its contact is free from conceptual construction, meaning that Indriya Pratyaksha is the direct knowledge of the object in itself without taking any subsequent conceptual property. What about Anumana? Martial claims both knowledge as cognitive awareness that arise as episode, but each such episode is a discrete member of some awareness, series or other. Pratyaksha is the first moment of cognition, the moment of the first awareness, the first flash of knowledge, and Anumana is nothing but repeated cognition in the moment following the first flash of knowledge. Anumana is admitted as enduring cognition, in other words, recognition. Therefore, Anumana is subsequent moment followed by Pratyaksha. But to a great extent, they last as the same. Nevertheless, this transient flow of moment along the strings of events distinguish the senses from the intellect, and this results in the two different instruments for cognition. The first moment of sensation has the characteristics of the intellect being constructed and regarded as the source of right knowledge. Yao describes Manasa Pratyaksha as a particular type of mental perception and addresses the characteristic of Manasa Pratyaksha as an intermediate state between sense consciousness such as Indriya Pratyaksha and mental perception Anumana. The intermediate state of Manasa Pratyaksha by Yao's view is congruent to Gupta's interpretation of Manasa Pratyaksha as a link from the non-conceptual to conceptual perception. The sequential organization from sense perception and mental perception has been questioned in a similar way that whether Indriya Pratyaksha and Manasa Pratyaksha occur simultaneously or not. This issue is related to understanding perceptual mode of human experience in the context of temporality. Mahathera addresses the stream of self-awareness is made up of point moment of consciousness. Each of consciousness has no more than a momentary duration. In the context of definition of Pratyaksha, the occurrence mode between Indriya Pratyaksha and Manasa Pratyaksha brings out an argument in the sense of pramana among other Buddhist schools. Even later commentators named Dharmakirti or Dharmapala differently interpret Dignaga's system. Yao draws the idea of Dharmakirti from Pramanavartika and quote Dharmakirti's proposition like this. If mental perception grasps an object perceived previously by sense perception, then it is not a valid cognition. If it grasps an object that has not been seen, then the blind person should be able to see a visual object. On the contrary, Yao brings out the view of Dharmapala from Vijnapti Matrata CD. Dharmapala says that when five sense consciousness arise, there must arise a mental consciousness which can give rise to the mental consciousness of the subsequent moment. Why does this latter mental consciousness need the five sense consciousness as its immediately contiguous condition? It is generally understood that each dharma has discrete momentariness, and further, the temporal structure of dharma has undergone a radical change around the 5th century CE when Dignaga's theory of pramana was proposed. However, the rationale of Buddhist logic by Dignaga can be historically traced back to one of the Buddhist schools, that is, Sarvastivada. Sanghabhadra, who is Sarvastivadian scholar, commented one of major discussion of Sarvastivadin in regarding to perception and inference. Sanghabhadra says there are two kinds of practices, one real and the other conventional. So the truth can be subcategorized into real truth and conventional truth. What are their characteristics? The real refers to the particular characteristic of a visual object whose collection is perceived by perception, pratyaksha. The conventional is known by inference or conception, which is analytical. In other words, anumana. Real as perception and conventional known by inference from Sarvastivada school seems correspondent to pratyaksha and anumana from Dignaga's theory of pramana, respectively. It is worthwhile to investigate the way the Sarvastivada interpret perception and its reflection to the concept of temporality, because this information can be applied to modern science, in which understanding the temporal aspect of human experience can be re-evaluated from the notion based on science. There are several Buddhist schools in India. One of them is Sarvastivada, and each school has their own slogan. The slogan of Sarvastivada school is "All exist." This means the Dharma exists all the time, regardless of past, present, and future. This slogan is related to 5 Khanda, 12 Ayatana, and 18 Dhatu. If I include the relationship between 5 Khanda, 12 Ayatana, and 18 Dhatu in this lecture, it will take too long. So, all you have to understand is the main theme of Sarvastivada school is the Dharma exists regardless of time demarcation. The idea of 3 times, such as past, present, and future, by the Sarvastivadin is the duration of a moment is too short to establish the relationship among dharmas. Therefore, time is static, and also dharma are static. However, this does not mean that time or dharma is permanent. Rather, since a change of dharma cannot be comprehended in a sense of time according to the Buddhist doctrine of impermanence, only the perception of state of a dharma between before and after defines time. In other words, time cannot intervene between a change of dharma, and this does not imply eternalism, but rather the existence of dharma is understood as the state of dharma which is connected with its function throughout the 3 times period. Robert Boswell mentioned, for the Orthodox Vaibhasika, function and present are coterminous and definable only in relation to one another. Past and future have no distinct meaning except in relation to this present moment of functioning. It does not simply mean that the Dharma itself exists throughout the 3 times, but the function of Dharma exists at the present time. Since the past and future are related to the present, the function of Dharma can be exist throughout the 3 times. How are the Buddhist school's idea? The Theravadin claims that the existence of Dharma throughout the 3 times is a heresy of eternity, because the object of perception in the past must be coordinated with the past sense faculty. By a similar token, the future object with the future sense faculty. Since this kind of sensory operation is not plausible, the present perception of the object does not mean real. Therefore, Sarvastivada's proposition is invalid. Another reason to refuse Sarvastivada's idea lies in that the consistent nature of reality between the past, future, and the present can bring out inalterability, which can provide a negative impact on moral cause and effect. In contrast to the Theravada's disapproval of the Sarvastivada's principle, there is a Buddhist school named Andaka school. In Andaka school, the evaluation of Sarvastivada's doctrine is quite different from other Buddhist schools. They state that this view was developed based on the experience of meditators who have acquired facility in all of the 8 jhana. The meditator attained jhana was seemingly able to enter at will again into any of these absorptions. This mental state remained identical in past, present, and future. There was a continued projection of a past, future state of jhana even in the present moment. Boswell describes that the well-trained meditation practitioner expound their experience of free passage of the 3 times compared to the non-practitioners by means of the inference, anumana. One of the benefits of attaining the state of jhana by way of meditation is recollecting the past lives. There are several passages from Sutta Pitaka which addressed remembering the past. In Digha Nikaya, just so the monk with the mind concentrated remember past birth. This is a fruit of homeless life. And in the same Sutra Digha Nikaya, the discourse says, some ascetic or Brahmin recalls various past existence, 1 birth, 2 birth, 3, 4, 5, many eons of contraction and expansion. Then I was called so and so. This was my clan, my caste, the caste system in India. And when I passed away from there, I was reborn in such and such other circumstances. Passing away from there, I was reborn here. In this way, he remembers the details of his various past lives. There are devas whose lifespan is not to be reckoned by counting or computation. Yet, whatever existence they have previously experienced, whether in the world of form or in the formless world, whether conscious, unconscious, or neither conscious nor unconscious, they remember the details of their past lives. This is the unsurpassed teaching in regard to remembering of past lives. It seems particularly impossible to trace back previous lives with normal cognitive system. Buddhaghosa mentioned that it is possible to recollect all the things that happened throughout the night and day in reverse order. While this much, however, is evident even to his normal consciousness, it is especially evident to his preliminary work consciousness. But if anything there is not evident, he should again attain the basic jhana, emerge and advert. By so doing, it becomes as evident as when a lamp is lit. With the manner of emerging from the state of jhana and adverting to the recollections, the meditation practitioners can access to things in reverse order as far as back in the past. One of the 4 types of Pratyaksha by Dignaga is concerning the yogin's meditation. In Pramana Samuchaya written by Dignaga, Hattori translates Dignaga's view of yogin Pratyaksha like this. The yogin's intuition of a thing in itself unassociated with the teacher's instruction. This statement implies that the master's teaching cannot be understood in any forms of word or language, indicating that yogi Pratyaksha is free from conceptual construction, which means that it belongs to Pratyaksha. Gupta addresses Dharmakirti's opinion on yogi Pratyaksha in Pramanavartika that it is not sense-object-based perception. Rather, yogi Pratyaksha is a deep and clear perception, which can be achieved by way of meditation. And this results in the realization of the highest truth, such as the Four Noble Truths. So you need to think about that. We simply saying each truth of Four Noble Truths, but the meaning is really deep and profound. Maybe somebody who engaged in meditation practice and attained jhana, those practitioners might fully understand each truth of Four Noble Truths. Stravatsky differentiates yogi Pratyaksha from the other 2 perceptions, such as Indriya Pratyaksha and Manasa Pratyaksha. He says, we may call the first Indriya Pratyaksha a moment of pure sensation, and Manasa Pratyaksha the second, the moment of mental sensation. In order to reserve the term of intelligible intuition for the mystic intuition of the saint that result from yogi Pratyaksha. According to the content of meditation experience, it is likely that the meditation attainment might facilitate transformation of ordinary mental state into the potential state in which free travel without limit of temporal demarcation can be possible. Remembering the past from the present time period implies the condition of linked timeline throughout the 3 times. And this is congruent with the proposition of Sarvastivada school. Admittedly, the Andaka school proposed the idea of identical states of the 3 time period during the state of jhana and addresses that it can be experienced by way of meditation attainment. Alex Wayman supports the proposition of Andaka school by stating that I noticed the Theravadin arguing with the Andaka who claimed that in jhana, successful meditation, there is a continuity of consciousness, so also in the subconsciousness. In the Dharmakirti's system, this jhana is given as yogi Pratyaksha, which along with its meditative object is attributed momentariness. Provided that the doctrine of Sarvastivada school can be applied in the context of advanced mental state, it is assumed that Sarvastivada school gives attention to the significance of the meditation practice. In the Buddhist teachings, meditation practice has been often recommended to understand the human experience, and the rationale behind the benefit of meditation practice is expounded by psychological approach rather than experimental data. There are several sutras in Sutta Pitaka to expound for jhana category. And if you go into Pottapada Sutta in Digha Nikaya, this sutra describes the feature of each jhana. Attaining jhana allow human being temporarily taking themselves out of sense world to other realms such as the realm of form or the realm of formless. Meditation practice shifts our ordinary cognitive process so that it facilitates to experience yogi pratyaksha. We study Four Noble Truths with respect to valid means of knowledge. Four Noble Truths contain contents of realization, the knowledge of the destruction of the taint, and the development of six supernormal power. All teachings of Buddhism are contained in the Four Noble Truths. So if you read Digha Nikaya and Samyutta Nikaya, you can find the significance of Four Noble Truths. Practitioner must know thoroughly each noble truth and must take each truth to heart. The Buddha expounds the significance of meditation like this. These are the feet of trees, bhikkhus. These are empty huts. Meditate, bhikkhus. Do not be negligent, lest you regret it later. This is our instruction to you. So today you will study Four Noble Truths with respect to pramana, that is, the valid means of knowledge. Let's solve the question first. What is the valid means of knowledge proposed by Dignaga? This is the same question I gave you last week, but one more time. So you learn two attributes to explain valid means of knowledge. What are those two valid forms of knowledge? So you can find the answer easily. Second question, what is called perception in Pali? So in valid means of knowledge in Pali is pramana. Pramana consists of what? I pronounce many times. So you can find the answer easily. The last question, what is it called? Conception or inference in Pali. So perception and conception, or perception and inference. You can find the answer easily. And once you complete 3 questions, you submit answer of question to my email address. It's routine process, weekly base. And this time, the date is November 1st. Please send it to my email address, also include your email. And in the email main body of text, you just write down your official name, last name, comma, followed by first name, and just answer 3 quiz questions. And the due of this assignment is November 7th. I am going to add one more announcement. Next Monday, you will have a midterm, November 8th. The midterm is composed of 10 multiple questions, which count 50 points. And the rest question is essay question. Also, this essay question count the rest of 50 points. The topic of essay is the Four Noble Truths with respect to Dignaga's pramana theory. So you study Four Noble Truths and you study the valid means of knowledge. So in the essay question, you can write down your understanding or your comment on the Four Noble Truths in the context of valid means of knowledge. I strongly encourage you to read the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta or Mahaparinirvana Sutta, and you can collect some idea of Four Noble Truths and meditation. In the essay question, you need to use 12 font, Time New Roman font, and it is double-spaced, and you can write down maybe 600 to 1,000 words, about 1.5 page. Please do not worry too much about the essay question. You can write down your idea related to Four Noble Truths. I will introduce a detailed instruction next Monday when you have the exam. This is the end of lecture the week of November 1st.